Tennis Network with national award-winning USBTA tennis professional and USTA.
Hi, I'm listening to a podcast.
Is Coach Mick here to guide you through this episode of
I'm listening to a podcast. Shh. Sorry.
Hey, I'm trying to listen to a podcast.
Oh, hi, my name is Coach Mick with the Realtennis Network, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast page. And what I'd like to show you in this video is what a podcast is, different ways that you can listen to a podcast, and then take you step by step how you can access my podcast or any podcast with a lot of different avenues. So starting off, what is a podcast? I have a lot of students that I actually teach tennis to. I'm still a full-time on-court tennis professional. And when I talk to my students about my podcast, I get a lot, what is a podcast? And a podcast is basically an on-demand radio show where you can listen to anything that interests you, whether it's tennis or fishing or cooking or anything. There's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and you can listen to them on demand, when you want, where you want. And if you decide to listen to only 15 minutes like I just did here waiting for my lesson, you can actually pick right back up where you left off. Unlike a radio show where you have to set aside, let's say 12 to 2 during the afternoon or 6 to 10 in the morning to listen to the shows that you like to listen to. And even now, radio shows are coming out with podcasts for people that want to listen to their shows later on during the day. Now, the great thing about podcasts is I don't have to be sitting in front of my computer. I can be, riding my bike, shoveling the driveway, mowing the lawn, going for a run, driving my car, and I can listen to what interests me whenever and wherever I want. So what I'm going to do next is show you some ways that I like to listen to podcasts so you get an idea of where and when you can listen to podcasts. And then after that, I'm going to take you step by step on how you can listen to a podcast on my website, in iTunes, and on a couple of different podcasting apps that you can find either on your tablet or smartphone, so you can listen to them anywhere you like. So if you're unaware or unfamiliar with what a podcast is, I suggest you listen to the rest of this video. If not, I just want to say welcome to the Realtennis Network, and I hope to have a relationship with you through my podcast where I interview experts from all over the world on topics that may interest you. And remember, if there's something you want to hear, you can click that little red tab on the side of any web page and let me know personally what you want to hear more of, and I will make sure I deliver that content for you. And remember, if you have any questions, you can always go to mick@realtennisnetwork.com. Enjoy the videos. Hi, I'm Coach Mick, and I'm listening to a podcast. Hey, guess what I'm doing? I'm listening to a podcast. Shh. It's Coach Mick, and he's listening to a podcast.
All right, so the first way I'm going to show you to listen to the podcast is on the podcast page on the website. And this is not going to be you're going to have to be sitting down at like your desk or have your laptop with you. And I guess you could have a tablet with you and listen to it that way. And you could even do it on your phone, but it's a little bit more tedious. You can't skip around as easily on your phone unless you have an actual podcast app, and we'll get into that later. But let's say I click on the podcast page here. So I'm going to click on podcast, and it shows you all of my latest podcasts, just like this. And if you look at the podcast, let's take a look at this one with Andy Fitzel. He's a great guy. On the podcast page, not only do we have the player right here, all right, in blue, and I'll show you that in a minute, but I like to almost make it a post where I show you exactly what I talk about in the podcast. So if you don't want to listen to it, you can pretty much read the post. These are all the things that I talk about. And if you go down to the very bottom of the post here, you'll see that I actually, on most every podcast that I have, I've got a episode 7 template. So I click on that, and that'll show you a one-page template of this episode. So just one page, and there you go. And so you don't have to listen to the whole thing if you don't want to. All right, I'm going to go back to the podcast page here now. And let's go on my latest podcast. So you'll see that your questions answered right here. So people have asked me questions, and this was done on my survey. And again, what I did here on this post, I just actually posted the question, and I gave you a real short answer, but I also put in the time where you can go listen to the answers to these questions. So you don't have to go searching all over the place. And I even added in some extra hitting zone videos or anything I felt that would have helped you in answering your question. I added it in, whether it was talking about it, and if I, on the podcast, I'll let you know if I left some videos for you. So this blue play button right here, if I were to push this, you can listen to it.
Real Tennis Network, episode 10.
Hi, this is Roy Emerson, and you're listening to the Real Tennis Network.
Instructional,
All right, then it goes into
entertaining,
the
and
podcast just like that, and you can listen to the whole podcast that way. So one last thing I want to show you on this page, if you look over here to the right, there's this red tab that says Ask a Question. And this is something I'm hoping that a lot of you will start using. And if I click on that, you'll see it'll say Start Recording. I'd love to hear from you. Please record your message. RTN reserves all rights to recording. So that just says that I'm able to use those on my podcast. So I want to hit Start Recording, and I'm going to click that. Now there's a little box that pops up here that says Allow or deny your microphone to be used. And this is just saying, hey, can we use your microphone in the computer? So I'm gonna say, it's like what Skype does. So I'm gonna hit allow. Say, hey, Coach Mick, my name is Chris Michalowski, and I was wondering on my serve why it's important that we use the continental grip versus the eastern grip. Then I can push stop. Now, if I want, I can listen to that once again. Say, hey, Coach Mick, my name is Chris Michalowski, and I was wondering on my serve why it's important that we use the continental grip versus the eastern grip. All right, so there's my question that I asked there. And I'm going to go back to proceed. Now, if I push send, and you can send your name and your email if you want, and if you do that, I might be able to send you some videos and or send you something privately, that I would just say, you know what, I just want to answer his question in an email. But if you hit send here like that, that just sends right to my email in an MP3, and I can actually put that question right on the podcast. So that's pretty cool. So hopefully you'll start using this Ask a Question tab, and that is also available on your tablets and iPhones as well, or smartphones. Now, another way that you can listen to the podcast, and I'm just going to minimize this, is through iTunes. So I'm going to go to my iTunes tab here, and you can see there I am in iTunes. And I'm going to go to podcasts, and I am going to search. So where's podcast? So it's accessing the iTunes store for podcasts. All right. And let's take a look here. I'm going to type in Real Tennis Network. All right. You can see I'm already there. So I'm going to type that in, and there I am. And there's some episodes there, and that's the results. Now, if you click on this logo here, the bigger one here, you'll actually get this page in iTunes where it shows a little bit more. It's going to give you some information on each one. And once again, I can go and listen to any podcast that I want. Let's listen to number 7.
Real Tennis Network, episode 7.
Why can't I pass someone when they're at the net?
How come when I poach, I get burned down the line so much?
Why are my ground strokes so sloppy all the time?
All right, so there's just a little intro right there for you, and I can listen to the whole podcast there. Now, there's also a button here called subscribe, and if you subscribe, then you'll be notified whenever I come out with a new podcast, and a little window will pop up there. Are you sure you want to subscribe to the Real Tennis Network with Chris Michalowski? And hopefully you'll say yes, and you'll subscribe. And the last thing I want to show you, which is extremely important to me, and I hope that you would take the time to do this, it would really mean a lot to me, where it says ratings and reviews. And if you can rate my podcast, and hopefully if you like it, you'll be able to write a review and rate that for me. And when you do that, that just gives me a little bit more clout in iTunes. And when you write a review, you can also do that on some of the podcasting apps as well. We'll show you a little bit later. So I hit write a review right here. I can title it, awesome podcast. All right, with an exclamation point, and then I can write whatever I want to write. So please, if you like the podcast, go ahead and rate that and review, and that would mean an awful lot to me. And next, what I'm going to do is show you some ways that you can actually access my podcast on your smartphone or tablet. So if you're on the go or on the run or in your car, you can listen to it anywhere. Hi, it's Coach Mick, and what I'm going to do right now is show you how to access the podcast on your handheld device. This is an iPhone here, and you can see the iPhone already has this podcast app on it. Most iPhones come with this app already pre-programmed in, I believe, and if not, even if I went to iTunes here on this phone and I typed in Real Tennis Network, Real Tennis, all right, Network, and I search for that, it's going to pop up automatically right here. Now, if I go to listen to any of these episodes, it's going to say open the podcast app to view it anyway. So we're just going to cancel that out, and I'm going to go straight to the podcast app here. So here's the podcast app, and you can download that in the App Store. And I'm going to go to the search here and type in, well, I already did, okay, Real Tennis. I must have caught that off the iTunes. Real Tennis Network with Chris Michalowski, and there you go. So that's what it looks like. Here's my latest podcast here, Your Questions Answered. So we're going to go ahead and listen to that. All right, let's listen ahead.
Real Tennis Network, Episode 10.
Hi, this is Roy Emerson, and you're listening to the Real Tennis Network.
Instructional, entertaining, and informative through an association.
All right, so I'm going to show you one of my favorite apps called Stitcher, and I like Stitcher because I can listen to basically anybody's podcast I like, or I can look for things I'm interested in. It's the third one down there on the left. But let's say it wasn't there on the left, and I didn't have it. Well, what I would do is I would go to my App Store, and there it is, but I'll take it off real quick. And let's say I'm just searching around here in my App Store, and I see the search feature there. So I'm going to go to search, and I'm going to type in Stitcher, and it should pop up for me here pretty quick. There it is. And it says open on mine, but if you did not have it, it would probably just say free, and you click on that, and then it'll say install. So you can do that. And I already have it on mine, so I'm going to go to my home screen there, and there it is. So when I click on Stitcher, you can see right now it's got just some different things. I can look up different podcasts if I'm interested in education. I can look up the top shows in education, and there's a bunch of different shows right there. But let's say I wanted to search for something that I was interested in. So I click that search little magnifying glass, and I type in fishing. I like fishing. All right, so there's fishing, and I'm going to type in search and see what pops up when I hit search for fishing. It looks like this Orvis fly fishing one. I like that, so I'm going to click on that. And you can see here, it shows all the different podcasts I can listen to whenever I want. Now, let's say I like those, and I listen to one, and I like it. Well, you see that little arrow. You'll see it in the upper right-hand corner right there. I can hit that arrow or that plus sign, which I did. And now it's going to be in what we call one of my favorites. So if I go to my favorites playlist here, and it's where those three lines are. If I click on that, it'll take me to my favorites playlist. And I go over there, you can see there it is at the top, Orvis Fly Fishing. These are all podcasts that I listen to. And I don't listen to them all the time. I don't have that much time on my hands. But if I click on Orvis, you can see there, and I click on at the lower left there. There's all those podcasts again, and I can just listen to whatever one I want. It's great. So let's say I wanted, I've already downloaded the Real Tennis Network. So I'm going to go back to my favorites, and you can see Real Tennis Network right there. So there I am. I'm going to click that there, and you can see all of my podcasts so far up to this point here. And let's say I want to listen to it. I just click the listen button.
Resuming episode.
Now, if you think about the general concept of the approach shot to put your opponent in a defensive position, well, when it's going cross court, going to put your opponent in a defensive position.
All right, so I'm done listening to that, and the next time I put out a podcast, if I want to see if there's any new ones, this will automatically download. I can set it up in my settings. All the podcasts that I listen to, it'll download the latest episode on my iPhone for me. So let's say I wanted to listen to a podcast, I wouldn't have to stream it because it'll just download it automatically, and then I can just listen to it if I'm anywhere. It's already there. I don't have to have it on Wi-Fi because it's downloaded into my phone. When a new episode comes on, then it gets rid of that last downloaded one and downloads the new one. So it's a pretty cool feature. So I could listen to these on an airplane. I don't have to be on any kind of Wi-Fi or anything like that. So that's called Stitcher, and that's one of my favorite apps to listen to podcasts with. So hopefully, if you want to listen to the Real Tennis Network, one thing I do is I take my smartphone, and through the bottom of it, through my headphone jack, I plug that in, and I plug that into an audio jack in my car, so I can just listen to any of these podcasts as I'm driving to work, or if I'm going on a trip somewhere. I can just listen to any podcasts. I actually have a car where I have one of those cassette tape little deals where it's got the wire coming out of it and the 1/8 inch, and I can plug that in. I put it into the tape player, and the cassette goes in there, and it just plays through my car that way as well. So it's a great app. Again, you can strap this to your arm, and while you're riding your bike or jogging or mowing the grass or whatever you do, it's a great way to kind of just pass the time when you're doing something that you really don't need to be super focused on. And hopefully it'll fire you up a little bit to play more tennis after you listen to the Real Tennis Network. So go ahead and give Stitcher a try, or the podcasting app. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at mick@realtennisnetwork.com.